All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda. This is Sharon Salzberg, uh, one of my absolute heroes. It feels very surreal to be here talking to Sharon today. It's something I've dreamed about for years. And I actually just cold emailed Sharon a couple weeks ago asking if she would be open to talking to me, and she said yes. So thank you, Sharon.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me, really.
It's truly my pleasure. I want to tell everyone a little bit about you and how you inadvertently came into my life. Um, Sharon is my guru. She is an incredible meditation coach and teacher and Buddhist teacher. Um, I was first introduced to you through the meditation app 10% Happier. Um, Sharon teaches incredible guided meditations on 10% Happier, and I was fortunate to cross paths with loving kindness meditations, which Sharon teaches and is very well known for. And I didn't want to stop there. I did the course on 10% and felt a connection right away, and started reading about you, found your books, um, Real Love, Real Change, Loving Your Enemies, and they just changed my life. They changed the way I thought about everything. Um, Eventually led me to get sober, which further changed my life and further led me into this world of meditation and spirituality. Um, but I have a ton of questions for Sharon, questions that I've been dying to talk to someone about because I don't have a lot of people that I can talk to
Mhm.
about this stuff. Um, so I'm just going to start out by saying that this is a conversation specifically about millennials and their relationship with meditation. Um, I am a millennial. I'm 29 years old. I feel very lucky to have found this at such a young age. I feel like that's not necessarily super common. Um, I have noticed that meditation is seen by a lot of young people as very abstract and difficult. Meditation changed my life, and I constantly struggle with wanting to share that modality with other people who are struggling because I think when you find something that helps you, I'm the kind of person that wants to share that. um, but I think it's really important to say that meditation didn't cure my depression. It didn't solve all my problems. What meditation did for me was teach me how to live in the present. That's something that Sharon literally taught me what to do. Um, and by living in the present, I started to notice things and I was able to ask for help when I needed it. Um, Meditation taught me that no matter how badly I felt in the moment, I always had something to be grateful for, and I could always pull myself out of that painful moment. So, the questions that I'm so excited to discuss today, I hope will illuminate how meditation has changed my life, and I hope can help me and others find a path that can, spread the word and hopefully change the world for the better. So that's my little intro. All right, Sharon, are you ready? Should we dig into some questions?
I'm ready, but first I want to say, first of all, congratulations on your sobriety, which I think is a tremendous thing and
Thank you.
really, really a great thing. And also, I don't know if you know, but they say the Buddha, before he became the Buddha, he left home at 29. That was his big moment in time where he started to deeply question what had been his previously quite self-indulgent life. So 29 is a very interesting age also for transformation.
Wow, I didn't know that. That gave me chills. That's very cool. Wow. Um, yeah, I mean, I any tidbits you have to share about Buddhist teachings, anything. I am here for all of it. So excited. Just you're an amazing person to be able to have a conversation with. So let's get into it. I did pre-write some questions just so everyone knows. I really wanted to make sure I used my time wisely. So, starting off, something I think about a lot is that growing up, I was taught never to listen to myself. I was always told to listen to the people around me, whether it was my family, my peers, my teachers. And I think it created a lot of unhealthy habits of putting other people's emotions and feelings before myself. Um, in your book, Real Love, you discuss how the media controls the way we perceive ourselves. And you say that some have discussed that the media actually might be selling us self hatred. Why do you think so many millennials exist in the collective consciousness where it's commonplace to have low self esteem and, in many cases, hate yourself and think it's okay to hate yourself? I have been there. I will say that up front. Those words have come out of my mouth before.
Yeah, I mean, I think something my friends and I used to say was all the wrong people hate themselves, like, because I think there's two aspects to it actually. One is about self esteem, and the other is more about self compassion.
Mm-hmm.
So, self esteem, I think, would be taking a rightful kind of pride, not an egotistical, conceited pride, but a sense of delight in one's accomplishments or the choices we make. Sometimes they're really hard choices, and we decide to be more truthful or to be simpler, rather than have some huge complicated drama or whatever. These are not easy choices, and for some people, like in sobriety, that's a daily choice. That's not just once, and so there's, or even hour by hour, moment by moment, and so to feel good about that is an important thing. And I think a lot of times, partly, I think we live in a society, a culture that praises disparagement. You will feel better about yourself if you only put someone else down. And so we see it in entertainment all the time. Like, I don't watch a lot of reality TV, but when I was before the pandemic at a friend's house, and they would turn on a show, I would see it, and I remember this one cooking show where instead of the judge saying, well, that was an interesting effort, and I think if you get a little bolder in your use of spices, it would be better. It was like, take your knives and go. Like, you don't deserve to be alive, and it was dreadful. And that's what we think of as entertaining. And if you think about working in an office or a team, being part of a team anywhere in any pursuit, we're often taught, put them down. Like, it's a dog eat dog world. Don't help anybody else. They're not going to help you. And so it actually takes, I think, a conscious effort, not a violent effort or a forced effort, but it takes intentionality to just take a moment and take delight in, we tried, or our intention was really good, or we stepped out of our comfort zone to try to comfort someone else, or these are things that need to be celebrated and applauded. So that's the, like, self-esteem side. The self-compassion side is more relevant when we've, like, blown it. We've made a mistake. We've not lived up to something, or we've fallen down in some way. And that's realizing, and it takes, I think, a lot of experience to realize this, that the most effective, efficient way to change a habit, to make progress in something, to learn something, is not by putting yourself down endlessly. You'll just end up exhausted and demoralized, but it's having some kindness towards yourself. And that doesn't mean being stupid. It's like lessons learned. I made a mistake, or I fell down in some way. Okay, I'm taking that knowledge and moving on so that I have more resolve for the future. But if you just stay there stuck, feeling guilty, feeling terrible, feeling you're the worst person in the world, you're going to stay there stuck. And it's not helpful. It's not what resilience is about. And so I think they're both important lessons for us all.
Definitely. It's really interesting you bring up the reality TV example because I watch a ton of reality TV. It's always been my favorite, actually. So you are 100% correct. And I think it's really interesting how that sort of violence and abuse sells and brings so many people in because it is entertaining. I wonder, do you think that has to do with American society? Is this like a human global phenomenon? Or like where does people's interest in watching other people get hurt come from?
That I actually don't know. It would be an interesting question to poll, from
Yeah.
lots of different cultures. I think there is something strikingly Western about a sense of individuality that is oppositional to being part of a team, and yet I think real understanding of how systems work and how we get ahead, and a true understanding of interconnection is that, like it or not, we're part of a team. It's always like that. And one of my favorite things to do going into an organization or a company to teach is to ask, how many other people need to be doing their job well for you to be able to do your job well?
Mhm.
Because when you think about it, it's like, oh, right. It's like not too long ago, I was talking to a physician who heads a large medical practice, a hospital. And he said, I have like a whole new appreciation for it is the cleaning staff. And I thought, well, yeah, like think of that. Or, who put in labor in some ways so that we had lunch today, like somebody grew a crop and
Yeah.
planted those seeds and harvested it and transported it and either prepared it or sold it to us so that we could prepare it. And there's a lot of human energy in that string bean, or whatever.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. It's really unfortunate how close-minded uh, the majority of our society is so that we only see what's right in front of it. Um, I do feel like meditation has opened my mind to the point where I'm almost too sensitive to everyone else. I feel like I see it all, the entire chain of production. Um, and it's hard um, feeling that empathy towards all of the people that are mistreated um, to get us what we need to survive and not thinking about what they need to survive. Yeah, I thought about that a lot when I was reading Real Change. Um, you do a beautiful job of describing it and giving credit where credit is due. Um,
Yeah,
but
thank you. Well, the other side of it, I think that's a tenderness, that sensitivity is something that I think grows in us as we get more aware. But another side of that is just like gratitude, and
yeah,
it's also realizing people are counting on us
yeah,
in some way, even if it's, I mean, life is so different right now. It's a little hard to think of examples because I was about to say getting in the elevator and smiling at somebody, but I don't know if you're allowed in elevators with other people right now. And how would they know if you smiled if you're wearing a mask? But wearing a mask is a good example,
right,
which we may do for the sake of other people.
yeah,
And maybe we should consider that, it's like there are ways of expressing our conviction
hmm,
that we live in an interconnected universe that also that kind of lift us, even as we have that sort of sensitivity.
yeah. I am so focused on this concept of living in an interconnected universe. Um, just knowing that and relinquishing my fears and worries to the universe and knowing that whatever is meant to happen will happen takes away so much of the pain of existence. Um, but I have to ask, why is that thought so abstract? Like why do you think so many people have such a hard time accepting that and choose just not to believe it?
My mind doesn't go there precisely. I think more about what can we see with the power of our own awareness,
Mhm.
because that's really the stepping stone to having a changed worldview or a commitment to transformation. And part of that is seeing the assumptions that we hold,
Yeah.
because they're fast, and often kind of subtle, but still powerful. And to understand that, oh, like, I'm not listening to that person, as one example. I'm not listening to that person because this other person told me they were boring.
Mhm.
So that's not something I know for myself. I walked into this conversation with that filter. So
Right.
I've just dismissed them. I'm thinking about my email and whatever. And you notice that and you determine, okay, I'm going to find out for myself. I'm going to pay full attention. Opens the door to a potential level of discovery that was closed to us before.
Mhm.
So what can we pay attention to more fully, more completely, and learn from that we were just sort of dream walking through,
Mhm.
before. And I think more about that and noticing. Um, I mean, even just doing that kind of reflection, like, I've had teachers like hold up a string bean or something and
Mm.
say, can you sense the sun, which is affecting the soil and everything that affects the quality of the soil in which this crop was grown, and who planted it and what were their hopes and dreams, and who, until you look at that string bean and you can see the world, and you
Wow.
learn to see your team that way at school, or in the office, or just actually reflecting, that elevator operator, for those places that still have them, was not at work today, I'd be climbing up, 17 flights of stairs, or the people who fix the electricity, or,
Yeah.
who maintains our lives. It's really quite a lot. And we can shift the way we look, because it's an interesting experiment, and it's quite valid. It's not like I'm going to enter this pretend realm, where
Mhm.
our lives are intertwined, and I'm going to make believe I see that, and I'm going to feel all sentimental. It's an actual shift because we're paying attention differently.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's all about awareness, being aware of our thoughts, and something that seems universally very difficult for people to be aware of and take control of are negative thoughts. Um, and in your book, you refer to an armor of negativity that we wear as protection. Um, I'd love to talk about how we remove that armor, and can shift our society to be more positive. And full disclosure, I lean very positive. Um, so I want to learn how I can help other people who it may not be as easy to always see the bright side of things.
Well, it's funny, you said you got really moved using 10% Happier, because Dan Harris, who founded that company and who wrote the book called 10% Happier, is like totally the opposite of how you're describing yourself. And,
Right, right.
his subtitle of the book was something like a cynical something,
Yeah.
and he prided himself on his cynicism. Um, so it was just kind of ironic in that,
I
which struck me in the moment.
Yeah, it made it very accessible. I liked that it
Yeah,
was built for skeptics. I didn't
yeah,
necessarily need him to convince me, but I know that most people do. So I loved that aspect of that.
yeah. I mean, I think it's tremendous. I think well, first of all, many evolutionary biologists will say we have a kind of negativity bias. It's like we're wired
Mhm.
to look for threat, look for danger, as though we were still in the jungle with predators out to get us and eat us. And so that's just what we're used to. And I think, first of all, it takes a kind of audacity of spirit to say, I'm going to make an experiment and just see what happens when I look differently. And a lot of people don't like that. They feel like it's coercive, or they're going to end up in, and Dan was certainly like this, so they're going to end up in some phony realm where they're making believe everything's lovely when it's really not at all.
Yeah.
But it's not that way at all. It's like being willing to make an experiment, to like, if you, for example, have the habit of evaluating yourself so that at the end of the day, you kind of reflect, how did I do today? And let's say you have the habit of pretty well only remembering the mistakes you made and where you fell short in trying to express yourself, or where you maybe disappointed somebody, let's just say, so much so that your whole sense of who you are and all that you will ever be is collapsed into this stupid thing you said inadvertently at a meeting.
Hmm.
It's almost like asking yourself, anything else happened today? Like
Right.
any good? It takes intentionality to
Yeah.
say, this is right where my mind goes. This is where my habit is. Let me just look from another angle. It's not moving to something totally phony and pretending you're perfect or everything was perfect, but it's so unlikely that all that you are and all that you'll ever be is now lost
Hmm.
into that stupid comment. So it's the collapse sensation that we're trying to balance out. So look for the good. What else happened today? That intentionality is the key to everything, because it's like seeing your whole life as like a creative medium. Like, I don't have to be stuck in this habit, and so
Yeah.
what is the good? What do I have to be grateful for? And a lot of people think gratitude is a really stupid thing, and helps appease you, like, oh, now you'll be satisfied with crumbs,
Hmm.
because you'll be grateful for what you have. But I think studies actually show that it's the opposite. It's like it gives you strength. It gives you a sense of resilience, so that you can fight what is oppressive, or what just seems wrong to you, and you don't feel like totally depleted and at a loss.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting because gratitude for me is essential. On my worst days or my worst weeks, when I didn't even feel like I could journal because I just had nothing to say, all I would do is write down a gratitude list. And within a couple days, I felt so much better. But something I've noticed is that positivity actually creates a huge sense of vulnerability, because if you're imagining things are going to go the way that you want, or telling yourself that, like, yes, this is going to happen, there's a much bigger fear of disappointment. And it might hurt more when that thing doesn't come true. And versus if you're telling yourself, oh, it's never going to happen, it's never going to happen, then it doesn't hurt when it doesn't. I don't know how we justify that.
Well, I'm not sure it doesn't hurt when it doesn't. It's just you've spread out the hurt, so it's lasting much longer. It's like
Yeah,
you're hurt on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and then when it doesn't happen on Friday, you're hurt then too.
yeah,
But you've added all those days of anticipation.
yeah.
So uh, I think also sometimes we suggest to people, just in the scenario like you're describing,
Mhm.
like, broaden your vision of what would be a satisfactory conclusion.
Yeah.
It's like when you say we can think that we will likely get what we want. Well, maybe what we want is too limited, and that
Yes.
we can feel a sense of peace or uh, fulfillment about not precisely that goal, but something related to that goal. So, for
Mhm.
example, like when people say, I want a lot of money, one of the exercises we do in response is say, well, you don't really want piles of green cash in your bedroom or something, right? You want what money represents to you:
Right.
safety, freedom, leisure,
Yeah.
adventuresomeness. It's got a lot of symbolic value, and having a lot of money may be one of the ways you can accomplish those, but maybe you can feel more secure and freer and have more fun and more leisure 50 other ways as well.
Yeah.
So why cut them off?
Yeah.
And so it's like that. Like, don't put down the fact that you want something, and uh, broaden it as much as you possibly can, because then there's a lot of chance that some aspect of it will actually come to be.
Definitely. Yeah. In my personal meditation practice, I use symbols so that I'm not limiting what I'm trying to attract represents. Um, the image is all encompassing, and it's definitely worked. It's a great technique. Um, Something that you've talked about so eloquently has been the concept of selfishness, which is very loaded. And I would love for you to talk about how humans are taught that being selfish and taking care of ourselves first is wrong and bad. And I've definitely spent a lot of time trying to convince my friends, like, put yourself first. Like, it is okay to do what is right for you. But it's a hard pill to swallow, you know? Especially among young women my age. We bend over backwards for our partners, our friends, our bosses. It's really hard to put ourselves first, and I want to change that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that is a particularly difficult conditioning for people who identify as women at any age. It's a strong conditioning in society, in this society. And there is a kind of ethic, like, it would be selfish to take time for yourself. It would be self-centered. I mean, most neuroscientists I talk to about formal meditation practice, if that's the path you want to undertake,
Mhm.
say sitting every day, say, I've heard from 7 to I think it was 12 or 13, let's say 13 minutes a day, will actually change your brain.
Wow.
And so that's not, nobody's saying you got to do it like 18 hours a day, before
Yeah.
you get any result. And these are measurable results in your brain in an fMRI machine, you know, and yet I know it's difficult to find those 13 minutes. It is difficult. And people, women especially, will often, not just women, but often women will say, I couldn't take that time for myself, like there's so much to do. And you think 13 minutes, let's stretch it to 15, like, really? But it is real. It's a very difficult conditioning to confront. And yet, um, if we look at where resilience actually comes from, or even just look at the stress dynamic, which I like to talk about because it's really a dynamic. There's the pressure, the stressor, the incident, the circumstance, and then there's the resource with which it's met. And we know that from ordinary life. If you haven't slept, as one example, and you're exhausted, and some little thing happens, you freak out. It's
Right.
unbearable. Whereas if you're rested, you don't feel alone, you just fell in love, you're full of faith, something, and that thing or a much graver thing happens, you think, okay, I have the wherewithal to meet this. I can meet this adversity. It's just a whole different relationship to what is, depending on the resource we can bring forth. So I think that's what resilience is resting on. It's having something we can draw on to
Yeah.
go forward, to start over, to bounce back, whatever it is. And so all of us look at, where does resilience come from, actually, that sense of wherewithal. Some of it comes from community, for sure, not feeling alone. And even if it's not physical community, it's a sense of connection
Yeah.
to a larger whole, a larger body of people, of beings.
Mhm.
And it also comes from inner strengths that we can tap upon. So where do those inner strengths get fortified? To some extent, that answer is different for different people at different times. Like, maybe it's alone time, maybe it's being out of nature, maybe it's listening to music. Uh, maybe it's taking care of someone else, helping someone else, or whatever. But if some sense of balance, taking care of yourself as well, is not in there, it usually doesn't last long. We get overwhelmed. We feel exhausted. We're fatigued. We burn out. And
Yeah.
so uh, it's not selfish to have that model in mind and say, what do I need to do that brings some greater balance into this dynamic and helps me actually strengthen those inner resources?
Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. I feel like this is something we should be taught as children so that it can really be fully worked into our lives. Um, and I think it also has a lot to do with self worth, um, and loving ourselves, which is what I have spent my quarantine doing. um, for me, being alone for the first time, um, no substances, no people, uh, really helped me become comfortable with myself. Um, I wasn't afraid of being bored anymore. I knew I was never really alone because I was my own best friend. I am my own best friend. Um, but it's hard, you know. I think a lot of people probably don't do it because it is hard. And that's actually, that kind of leads me into another question about meditation being hard and what pushes people to start this journey. Because for me, and from what I can tell, it seems like trauma is a common link among many of us. You know, a lot of us have experienced really difficult life events and hit a point of rock bottom. For me, I was just like, I'm not going to suffer anymore. I don't have to live like this. And I'm so grateful that I had that realization. But I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the barrier to entry. You know, like, is it only people that have really truly suffered who want to go down this path? I refer to it as the road less traveled, um, because not a lot of people choose this. Um, but I'm curious, you know, you've met so many people, and you talk a lot about suffering and trauma. So, what are your thoughts on beginning this lifestyle and embarking in meditation?
Mhm. Well, I think very, very often it's exactly as you describe. It is some kind of suffering or traumatic sense of life and or experience that leads one. Because basically, you're talking about, in a way, still breaking away from convention,
Mhm.
which is not that easy to do. And it's certainly these tools and methods are far more mainstream than years ago. I mean, I went to India when I was a junior in college and I was 18 years old because I had skipped a couple of grades in the New York City public school system. Um, and I had grown up in New York. I was going to college in Buffalo, New York. And I created this independent study program because I learned about meditation and I just caught on fire. I thought, I've got to learn how to do it. And so this is 1970. And I looked around Buffalo, did not see it anywhere um, at the time. So I created this independent study project for the school. Said I want to go to India and study meditation. I'd never even been to California before.
Wow.
Then I was going off to India because they said yes, and I did learn meditation in India, and it was so different then. The effort you had to put out and the intensity of the intention was really strong. You weren't going to find it on an app. I mean, there were no things like that, and you weren't going to even find it in a book, very likely, or very, very, very few books. And um, so, because you had such difficulty accessing the actual methods, the actual training, you really needed to be highly motivated. And that has gotten somewhat less intense as the barriers to accessibility have shifted we live in another world now, where if you're interested, you can pick up 10% happier or read a book or go to a class or whatever, now online, but still a class. And there's so many ways one can access it, which is great. I think that some of the barriers, the misunderstandings, people thinking this has to be tied to a belief system,
Mhm.
like it's about becoming something like a Buddhist or a Hindu, or rejecting anything else, those are falling away. And some of the, people like Dan, who's more self described as cynical or skeptical, was very persuaded by the science and the research and says, look at that. This isn't just like some woo woo thing. It has really got some backing. And so all of that is great. You still need to want to put it into practice.
Right.
And that, going back to the original thing you said, I think that is a strong cultural conditioning, is that we hold something in abstraction and think we've got it done, like that we understand it fully. But there's something very humbling about putting it into practice. It's like when I went to India in 1970, I had done an Asian philosophy class the year before, or the semester before, and um, I did midterm papers on, say, the Buddha's theory about pleasure and pain, and having a free mind, no matter whether you're experiencing pleasure or pain.
Mhm.
And I was also very, confident. I understood everything. I just had to pick up a method or two.
Yeah.
And then when I was sitting in India and it was my knee pain, it was a whole other level, like, how do
Interesting.
you live this? How do you bring this to reality?
Yeah.
how do you make it actually happen? Not just write another paper on it. And so that transition is crucial. Otherwise, it's a little like carrying around your yoga mat forever and never getting on it, like
Yeah.
that is hard. That's just a hard move to make. And so um, usually when people ask me, I say, well, I'm the kind of person, not everyone is, but I'm the kind of person who's very served by structure. So if
Mhm.
I say, I'm going to make a commitment to practice 12 minutes a day for 2 weeks, that has to be something realistic, like not outlandish, like I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, or,
Yeah.
so, or 5 minutes a day, it depends on what seems right to you. But I'm going to do this chunk of practice every day for this reasonable length of time, then I'll do it. And for me, every day is actually the easiest, because I think that the scientific finding I heard most recently was 12 minutes a day, 3 to 5 times a week will change your brain. But for me, like if it was 3 times a week, it would be Monday. And I think, let's start on Wednesday.
Right.
Then it'd be Wednesday. I'll think, I'll do it 3 times on Saturday, but every day is every day. And so that's the best thing, is some kind of structure,
Mhm.
so that you'll actually do the practice, because then you can evaluate on your own. Like, does this seem worth continuing? Does this seem worth pursuing? What happened? And the only thing I really caution people in terms of meditation is that the only really true evaluation is of your life. It's not of what happens in that formal, let's say, 12 minutes a day. Because
Mhm.
that may not change much. You may not see a big difference,
Mhm.
but you will be different in the way you speak to yourself.
Yeah.
When you've made a mistake, or how do you meet a stranger?
Yeah.
How interested are you in people rather than sort of defensive? And, how do you meet adversity and all of that? That's where you'll really see the change.
Yeah. Wow. So much, so many incredible gems of information in there. Um, I have to go back to the beginning and say that I too needed to go to India when I was 18. And it's been such an interesting experience for me. You know, starting meditation, getting sober, getting deeper into meditation, I achieved this whole new level of clarity where I saw my life and everything just kind of clicked and connected together. And that random intense urge I had to go to India when I was 18, I also went and studied abroad there. I found a program that would get me to India, get me as close to Tibet as humanly possible. We drove from Shimla to Ladakh um, over two
Wow.
months, and then did a homestay in Leh, um, which was incredible. We were studying 8th to 12th century Himalayan Buddhist art and architecture, and I read Pema for the first time, at 18 or 19, and it was so. It seemed random to me then that I just had this like very deep urge in my heart. Like I keep pointing to like my heart chakra because I feel it there that I needed to go there. Um, but I didn't know where that would lead me 10 years from then. Um, and it's incredible that my past self and my future self were connected on that level. And I just
Yeah.
see it so clearly now. And I can't wait to go back as the person that I am today. I just can't even imagine um, what that's going to feel like. But yeah, lots of other things in my life indicated where I was going. I just didn't know it then. Um, and that leads me to a question that I have been wanting to ask you for ever since I got sober, which is what and is there a connection between meditation and sobriety? Because a lot of the books I've read indicate that the answer is yes. Um, personally, I practice mindfulness, and I think that in order to truly be mindful, you have to stay present. And the second you introduce a substance, whether that be alcohol, marijuana, hard drugs, whatever, you're breaking that. Um, but I would love to hear your opinion on the topic. I'm just super curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a tremendous connection. Often people tell me, the sequence is that they get sober for whatever reason in life, and then I forget which one of the steps, kind of leads them to explore meditation.
Mhm.
That there's something there about the everydayness of that confrontation or of that acknowledgement, and needing to be mindful. And I think partly what happens is I have a friend named Judd Brewer who's a psychiatrist. He has a book that just came out on anxiety. I forget the exact title.
Oh yeah,
Um,
you interviewed him. I think I
but
listened to that one. Yeah.
yeah, so he uses mindfulness a lot, and he's an addiction specialist, and he uses it a lot in that examination. But this particular book happens to be on anxiety, and which is prevalent. And he made some reference to what our brain is looking for is, or what helps us not fall sway to addictive patterns is, he said, what we really want and what will change the brain is a bigger, better offer.
Mm.
Like, we're not often conscious of the pain associated with fulfilling an addictive desire. For anything, it's like if it's society's dictates about how we never have enough and we are never enough, and we believe that, it's like no thing is gonna satisfy that.
Right.
So we go shopping, we buy something, the joy lasts, I don't know, there's actually some study about how long that dopamine rush lasts, like 8 minutes or something like that, and then we need a bigger one, we need a better one. And so we're all in some kind of addictive spiral anyway.
Yep.
um, but if we could actually open to not only that rush but the pain,
Mhm.
then we're gonna instinctively just want that change, and then it's a question of what will support that change. So we have to be mindful enough to honestly experience the pain
Yep.
of something, and then we everything in us wants to move on if we love ourselves enough. to know that we should be happy, we could be happy. So it's all really tied in there. That mindfulness, the ability to have our vulnerabilities or our greed, whatever it is, highlighted, our fear, but without so much judgment, without spiraling down like I'm such a bad person. It's realizing, yeah, this is a habit in and of itself. This is conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere I was taught and began to believe that in order to be happy, which is what we all want universally, we want a sense of belonging. We want a sense of having a home somewhere in this body, in this mind, with one another on this planet. Somewhere I began to believe that this is really going to make me happy. And sometimes it's like only this is what's going to really make me happy. And that needs to dissolve. And we need to say, it's not that happy.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's like even outside of kind of an addictive spiral, look at how we're taught, many of us, that vengefulness is strength, like never let go of a grudge and like nurse that grudge forever. But if you're mindful enough to actually just watch your mind when you're playing out a vengeful fantasy for the billionth time, um, a friend of mine, I think this is an AA saying, he said, after going through some obsessive period about someone else's actions, whatever they'd done or said, and just going over it and 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 over it. I let him live rent free in my brain for too long.
Yeah.
Look at the consequences of just that kind of obsession. And, we see, oh, that's not that joyful. Or maybe we're taught compassion is really stupid. It's for suckers. It's going to leave you to just be taken advantage of. But take a look. What's it like?
Yeah.
When you actually have compassion for yourself, when you have compassion for someone else. And so we are the laboratory. We get to see for ourselves
Mm-hmm.
where that bigger, better offer is, where we can actually experience some genuine happiness, and then we can choose.
Yeah. Yeah, you are so right. Meditation or meditating definitely, well, meditating, specifically loving kindness, taught me how to be compassionate, genuinely, taught me what love is, and helped me to see how life is just a series of addictions, regardless of substance, uh, whether it be entertainment or shopping, food. And one that I would love to talk about in particular is romance, love, something that people my age think about a lot because society has put this ridiculous idea in everyone's head that you have to get married at a certain age and love is equivalent to happiness. Romantic love is equivalent to happiness. Um, so as I started peeling away all these addictions and really looking at myself, I had this moment that I describe as um, in spy movies when the spy has to like walk through the room with all the lasers, and they're like crawling under them to avoid them. I kind of woke up one day and felt like I was the only person that could see the lasers, uh, specifically in terms of how uh, we deal with romantic relationships. Um, I am totally a victim in the past of seeking validation from partners, not enjoying being single, having a really hard time being by myself. Um, and now that I've gotten to this point of stability where I can be really happy alone and don't need validation from a romantic partner, I feel very free. But I still see people doing it all the time. And I think it's just the worst. It's so hurtful. The amount of trauma that people experience dating is unreal. So I'm curious, if you have any thoughts on how we cannot be so focused on getting validation from romantic partners and getting in this crazy cycle of dating and hooking up and all of that and just enjoying being by ourselves. And when that person that is truly right for you comes into your life, I don't know, you go into it with a healthy mindset.
I was about to ask you what your favorite reality TV shows are, and can you imagine one based on what you just said? That'd
Yes,
be
I
very
actually
interesting.
have. I actually have. I think one of the worst shows on television right now, or the most depraved reality show, is called Temptation Island. And the concept of the show, this is so awful. They basically take four couples, they split up the guys and the girls, and put them in a house with eight single men and women. And they're allowed to cheat on their partner basically to see if they like someone in the house better than the person that they came with. And so I've actually been telling my friends that I want to do my own show called Isolation Island, where people go after a breakup to learn how to love themselves with a series of experts um, that teach them to love themselves and be okay with being alone, and everyone gets a dog.
That is like the best pitch I've ever heard. I love
Thank
that.
you.
Oh, everyone gets a dog. So sweet.
That's the important
That's
part.
amazing. That is so great. Well, I mean, yeah, I think that is, some of the most difficult conditioning we have because it's constantly telling us we're not complete, we're not enough. And it doesn't have to be that way. We can have, I think, far, far more fulfilling relationships when that's not where we're coming from. When we have a different vision of who we are and so on. It's sort of like there's this line in this movie that the book Real Love I actually based on. The movie is Dan in Real Life, which came out, I don't know, now about 12 years ago. And Peter Hedges, who wrote it, wrote a line where one of the characters says, love is not a feeling, it's an ability. Love is not a feeling, it's an ability. And I just resonated very strongly with that. And
Yeah.
because it reminded me of some of the deepest meditation experiences I had, say, doing loving kindness meditation in Asia when I would go there for like months at a time and just do that practice. And I realized that if I think of love as, and of course, love is a feeling as well, but if I think of it only as a feeling, it becomes like a commodity and it often appears as though it's someone else's hands to either give me, in which case there's love in my life, or take away from me, in which case there's no love at all. And I'm just, overcome with the sadness of that. And so I would get this image of like the UPS person standing at my doorstep with this package in their hands and looking down and then looking at the address and thinking, nah, I'm going somewhere else. And I go, wait a minute, then I have nothing. Then I'm bereft, then I have no love. And so if I think of it instead as an ability, it's inside me, it's mine to nurture, to cultivate, to grow. And other people certainly can inspire it or ignite it or threaten it, but ultimately it's mine.
Yeah.
And so I'm not like waiting, to get that power from someone else. It's within me. And along with that understanding that it's an ability. And in fact, when I wrote Real Love, which is all the whole book based on my thinking about
Yeah.
that phrase, I turned it in, and at one point the editor said to me, "You didn't finish it." And I said, "Of course I finished it. That's why I turned it in." And she said, "No, no." She said, "You just kind of told the story and drifted away. You need to finish it. You need like a conclusion." And I just couldn't finish it for like the longest time. And then at one point, I just realized, oh, if love is an ability, it's also a responsibility.
Yeah.
Like if I want love in a conversation, maybe I have to be the one bringing it in. Or
Yeah.
if I want love in a meeting, where something's being planned, maybe I have to be the one to bring it in. And so it's a very different take on love. And in fact, when I was first writing the proposal for Real Love, and I sent it to different publishers, somebody responded by saying, "Oh, the love market is saturated." And I realized what they were saying was that the romance market is saturated, like how to
Yeah.
find a relationship, how to keep a relationship, how to end a relationship.
Right.
But that wasn't what I was meaning. I was really meaning that capacity inside of us, which can be alive and nurtured in any circumstance.
Yeah. Wow. Really resonates. I love thinking about love as an ability, and it makes so much sense, the concept of someone else being able to ignite that. Um, and that feeling is addictive. It's just another thing to be aware of, and ideally not let control us. Um, but yeah, talking about it is the first step. And then read Real Love because it is a life changing book.
I
um,
like that.
I can't believe we've already been talking for an hour. I have one more question that I have to ask. Probably one of the most important questions for me, which is how can we help people who are suffering that don't have resources or maybe don't want to be helped?
I think it's I mean, of course, it's so painful, and yet there's something about presence and listening, and you know um, realizing that we may not be able to provide like a solution, or but we can hang in there anyway in terms of caring. It's like that's ultimately the message, is that um, maybe you don't have to feel all alone on top of what you're already going through.
Yeah, yeah, just being there for someone.
It's tough enough, whatever it is, but that horrible, corrosive feeling of like, no one cares, no one even notices,
Hmm.
makes things so much worse. And also helping, I mean, you said something really important earlier on when you talked about asking for help. And there's often such a stigma surrounding not doing well, falling down, suffering, being afraid, having psychological issues, whatever it is, and to sort of cut through that whole stigmatization and sense of shame, and just respond to a person as a person, and even if you can't figure out, and maybe you don't even want to try, maybe it's not appropriate, and how they can resolve their situation, but you can really always be part of that message, that um, I care, and I'm listening, and I'm here. See, even though you're in that messed up state, and
Right.
here may not mean physically here, but it's some kind of presence.
How do we set boundaries in those situations? That's something I've struggled with in the past. Not knowing how to set healthy boundaries when trying to help someone else.
Well, often that is, I mean, it's a big learning curve, and it has a lot to do with mindfulness and remembering balance, compassion for yourself as well as for others. It's noticing, and it's using all the tools of mindfulness, however you come by them. It doesn't have to be meditation, but let's say it's meditation, to understand when you're moving from that place of presence, to kind of feeling it's you're in charge of making it all okay, which
Mm.
we often do, and that's never going to work. We just crumble at some point, and so like I have a friend who would describe herself as the kind of person who could never say no.
Hmm.
So, at work or wherever she was, she'd be asked to like do this other thing that was part of someone else's job or something that was really unfair to herself, but she'd always say yes. So one day in her meditation, she like purposely brought up just that kind of situation where somebody asked her to do something and she really should have said no, but she couldn't. And
Mhm.
she just learned what was happening in her body, like this rush of panic coming up in her stomach, that feeling, which actually usually the visceral physical sensation is faster than the thought, oh, they may not like me if I say no. That's really the first thing that's happening. She really studied that feeling. So that then when she was back at work and that exact scenario played out and she felt that rush of panic, that was her feedback system to say, I'll have to get back to you about that. It's
Mm.
like she didn't have enough wherewithal to say no right then, but once she had some distance, she could.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of thing we do. It's like, first of all, we have to honor balance. It's not wrong,
Right.
to have that sense of boundary. It really isn't. And then we learn what it feels like as we're about to just step over it and forget about ourselves in a detrimental way. And we pause. That's another part of mindfulness is we learn just to pause. And then we can decide what we want to do.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
really want your reality TV show to get made. I think that is like the coolest thing ever. So
Oh, thank you.
I'm
Me
I'm gonna hope
too.
for that.
Same. I have successfully pitched reality shows in the past. Back in an old life, like 10 years ago. Maybe not 10 years ago, whatever, 5 years ago. So hey, never say never. Isolation Island coming soon. Um, well, wow. Thank you so much, Sharon. This has just been incredible, so enlightening. If you are watching this, go read Sharon's books or listen to her podcast or interact with her in any way on 10% Happier meditation app. Um, I can't speak more highly of you, and it's been such an honor talking to you.
Well, it's been really, really wonderful, getting to actually meet you. So I hope we continue the conversation in lots of different ways.
Me too. Me too. I actually am working on a project right now with a friend who's a amazing artist called Self Love 101. Or no, sorry, it's called Love Yourself 101. And it's 8 steps to learn how to love yourself with illustrations. So I'm definitely going to send them to you when they're done because I hope you'll like them.
Great.
And I can't wait to do your workshop next week on the 16th and 17th. I'm really looking forward to it.
Fabulous. That's great.
Yay. Well, thank you again, Sharon. So happy we've been able to connect, and I'm excited for the future.